Hello, today's video to the Red app is going to be a UFC coverage video. It is going to be analyzing the matchup between Khamzat Chimaev and Dricus du Plessis set to take place this Saturday, and I'm going to be talking about why it's interesting, who I think is going to win, how they're going to win, and the implications on this fight towards all of middleweight, as well as the greatest or best fighter of all time above 155 pounds. Massive implications and waves are set to happen, and this is one of the biggest fights that I have had the privilege of watching. I say this as a fan since 2011, since UFC 145. So let's dive right into the sweet, juicy details and analyze this thing. So you guys might be taken a bit back. I'm usually an artistic content creator. Lirish, why are you making a UFC video? If you guys have been following my Instagram, I've slowly been introducing many of my passions. My Instagram is beyond just art at this point. It's just a blog of what I like. Sometimes it's just my general thoughts. Sometimes it's art. Sometimes it's sport. It all differs and depends on what I'm into at the moment. So you're asking why this fight specifically? It's because this fight is right on, man. This fight is just so intriguing. There are 4 specific reasons that I decided to cover this fight. The first reason is that it contains 2 undefeated phenoms, and the second reason is tied to this reason, but this fight has massive historical narratives, which we are going to hop into. The third reason is what it means for middleweight in totality, and the fourth reason is stylistic intrigue, why this is a fun fight on every dimension of MMA. Why, if you don't like this fight, you probably don't like MMA. Let's dive right into it. Khamzat Boris Chimaev has never lost an MMA fight, whether it be outside of the UFC or within the UFC. He is a silent, stoic killer. He knows exactly what he is going to do every fight, as do the opponents, and nothing stops him from executing his game plan. It is a very Khabib-esque, cruel opponent to fight, where you cannot do anything. He is somewhat of an unstoppable, inevitable force. Dricus du Plessis, to some extent, is the exact opposite, right? He's also undefeated in the UFC, but he has had his shortcomings outside of the UFC. He's lost twice. And whereas Khamzat has these very clean victories most of the time, with Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman being the exceptions, Dricus du Plessis is a fighter that has equal amounts of difficulty with Brunson, I believe that's his name, and Israel Adesanya and Whitaker. Dricus seems to be the fighter where he has equal amounts of difficulty with the number 14th rank in the world and the number 2 in the world. But there's just something so impenetrable, so absolute about him. Fans have memed Dricus by saying he has plot armor, and I just have to agree. To some extent, those memes that say DDP by falling piano or DDP by something, these are true propositions because of how Dricus finds a way to win, even though he always looks as though he's in trouble. Maybe the MMA gods wrote him, maybe he's the main character of the UFC. But like I said, it's a very, very interesting stylistic matchup because of how dynamic and how these UFC fighters juxtapose each other, how they're opposites of each other. The fight just has massive implications on middleweight UFC history. I'm just going to say, fighters like Anderson Silva, Chael Sonnen, they are not good today. They are not nearly as good today. These are fighters that rose and became great when the UFC was still a toddler. Maybe that's too far, but a preteen would be more accurate. When the UFC did not have nearly the talent pool, when it didn't have nearly as much divisions, and where the UFC was essentially just a baby. Today's fighters, a few days ago, we saw Fluffy, the number 10th rank in the world, absolutely dominate someone. Fluffy, if he arose in 2010 he's probably getting 10 title defenses. So that just goes to show how competitive the UFC is today. But back to the topic, I digress. This fight has massive middleweight implications. Khamzat Chimaev, in my opinion, as per my eye test, is the best middleweight of all time. He has the best weapon in middleweight history, and really it's a weapon that contends him for, in terms of all UFC history in that skill, and he is one of the greatest, most resilient open grapplers / wrestlers we have ever seen. If there is absolutely no margin of error versus Khamzat Chimaev, because if you let your guard down for a second, he's going to take you down on either GNP and submit you. Conversely, Dricus is one of the most anomalous fighters we have ever seen, and for that, he is my second best middleweight fighter of all time. Unlike Khamzat, Dricus has a lot of proof. He has a very thick resume. He was the first fighter to ever submit Israel Adesanya. Albeit Israel being a little washed, this is still a very, very impressive feat. This is a guy that also dropped Robert Whittaker on his ass and was the second person to ever finish him in middleweight. A very, very impressive feat, especially considering that this was when Robert was very good still. And this is also a guy that teched Sean Strickland very, very badly in the second fight, essentially showing such a monumental level of improvement where he's almost not the same fighter as he was when he fought Whittaker, which was already a monster of a fighter. And besides just these performances, look at the eye test on Dricus. This is a big, powerful, stocky guy. This is a guy that has shown incredible in-fight adjustments. This is a guy that can submit you, can outpace you, or can finish you with his heavy hands. So it's just two of the most anomalous fighters in middleweight history. Never mind middleweight history, in the UFC history. And this clash of styles just implies such interesting possibilities that I'm going to dive into. Specifically, this is the style of a unstoppable force with, though he has a limited skill set, insofar as what we've seen, versus the jack of all trades with incredible physicals. The implications of this stylistic matchup is so fascinating because it has a very rare niche that it reaches. And this is a niche where both fighters have very certain ways of winning if they apply their game plans properly and neutralize the other person's game plans. And I know you guys are going to say, hey, Lirish, this is just every fight ever. No, it's not. Good luck with Justin Gaethje beating Islam Makhachev. Good luck with Brian Ortega, as he is right now, beating Ilia Topuria. Those fighters don't have any chance. Let's just be real. But Dricus and Khamzat have definite ways to win if they are able to execute their game plan, if they're able to assert their will. And we are going to explore that right now. We're going to analyze Khamzat's keys to victories right now. These are the three things he has to do. The first thing he has to do is to have active forward pressure. Key emphasis on active, because it's not the forward pressure part that is going to freeze DDP. It's the active part. What do I mean by active? He needs to constantly be throwing feints. He needs to constantly be kicking, be punching. He needs to get Dricus on his feet to the point where Dricus becomes hesitant and second guesses the potentiality of what he could do. If you guys remember Yan versus Merab, the reason Yan froze is because Merab threw so much information at him that even one of the smartest supercomputers, one of the greatest IQs we've ever seen in Yan, could not accurately capitalize on his game plan because Merab just kept coming forward and throwing so much different information at him, and Yan effectively froze. I think Khamzat and DDP, it's going to have to be that for Khamzat, but on a lesser level, if you know what I mean. There's a good chance that Khamzat is not just going to be able to take a dry takedown defense, because once again, this isn't somebody like Izzy or Alex Pereira with limited takedown defense. Dricus is a big, stocky guy. I'm sure he has been preparing for this specific fight for several months now, and he has game planned to have really good takedown defense. And the only way to take him down and guarantee, or at least significantly increase the takedown chance, is to be super active while moving forward so that Dricus eventually makes a mistake. If there is limited activity, then DDP has more. He has a lot more margin for error, a lot less margin for error, because Khamzat's just not doing the right things to capitalize on his winning opportunities. And if Khamzat doesn't move forward enough, then TDP has a chance to pace max, which I'll be talking about in his keys to victory. But ultimately, the first thing for Khamzat is just actively forward pressuring and being that fighter that asserts his repertoire and his way of fighting onto Dricus as opposed to the vice versa, because I'm telling you, you do not want to have Dricus have you on the back foot. Second thing, this is very obvious, gas tank management. Conservative gas tank usage. We have already seen Khamzat slow down. There's no fight that exists where Khamzat is as good in the second round as he is in the first round. These takes are most displayed within the Kamaru Usman fight and the Gilbert Burns fight. But Khamzat Chimaev, so far as we've seen it, is a few round fighter. And against a fighter like Dricus, who is a complete 5-round fighter, This is a big weakness. So Hamza is going to have to come in with a killer gas tank. And I'm going to get to this later, but I don't like his chances of winning if he does not finish Dricus in the first round. And if he's going to find a way to win, he's going to have to find a way to outlast Dricus by managing his own tank, because when his tank is done, the engine is useless. And so Hamza has to manage his gas tank appropriately, and he has to make sure that Dricus does not tire him out. This is very important. The third key to victory for Hamza Chimaev, defensive responsibility. This is a guy that, as we've seen, got dropped by Gilbert Burns in 170. And not to say that Burns is a slouch, because he absolutely isn't. He's he's one of the hardest hitting 170ers actually in his prime. But this is Dricus du Plessis. This is a guy that probably walks around at 210, 215 pounds, a big, stocky South African, and he can hit people very hard. He dropped Robert Whittaker and hurt him bad on a jab. The way he hits people and hurts them, it's not even their super knockout powers. It's these little stunners that he has that just rock people and throw them off of their game. Exactly as we saw versus Israel Adesanya. It was a little jab or a right hand that knocked Izzy and stunned him a little bit, and that eventually led to the submission. It was the little jab for Whittaker that eventually led to the ground and pound. So he has to be very, very careful, Hamza Chimaev. He has to be defensively responsible. If it was a fighter with less heavy hands, he wouldn't have to be as defensively responsible, because his process to take the opponent down would just be much easier because they can't finish him on the feet. But against a fighter like Dricus, you have to be defensively responsible, especially because of how unpredictable he is, which I'll get to Dricus' strengths next. Onwards to Dricus du Plessis' keys to victory. The first one, he's going to have absolutely incredible first touch takedown defense. And what I mean by this is Hamza Chimaev has a way of grabbing a singular body part and turning that almost like an artist into a bigger takedown threat. This is very resemblant in the Whittaker fight, especially. Hamza shoots from so far. This is not a takedown 99% of people in the UFC can pull off, but he shoots from so far, and he grabs a leg, and then he just chain wrestles and turns that into something else. And then he flattens you out, and then he gains top control, and then he eventually gains back control and either GNPs or submits you. So Dricus is going to have absolutely stellar first touch defense, because if Hamza finds a way to get his hands on a single limb, especially in the lower body, it's not looking good for Dricus. This is a guy that even took Kamaru Usman down effortlessly, a guy that had 97% takedown defense for his entire career. So Dricus, you got to be careful, man. And another point that kind of ties into this first touch defense is transitional disengagement. Dricus is going to have to find a way to use his forearms, to use his hands, to use sprawls, to fight off Hamza if he does get that first touch. He has to be very, very aggressive, because if you just concede the first touch defense and there's no strong transitional disengagement, you're not fighting the takedown properly, Hamza's going to eat you alive. So Dricus, you have to have the ability to disengage in transition. You have to shut down Hamza Chimaev's aggression. You have to fight back with your own aggression, or else it's game for you, my friend. And that's the first key to victory for Dricus. The second key to victory for Dricus is spontaneity. Dricus, a lot of people meme him for this, but I think this is one of the reasons that he is so difficult to beat. One of the reasons why nobody has ever beaten him in the UFC, besides maybe arguably Strickland in the first fight. But nonetheless, Dricus' greatest strength as a fighter is his spontaneity. Nobody knows what he's going to do. He's like a jack of all trades, but he comes in and does whatever he wants. Did we really think he was going to submit Israel Adesanya or finish Robert Whittaker? Did anybody think that? Did anybody expect him to come out and absolutely put on a striking masterclass versus Sean Strickland in the second fight? This is a fighter that can beat you with cardio, that can throw a head kick and finish you, that can submit you, that can chain wrestle you, that can pace max and put a pace on you, or he can just finish you with a heavy hand. This is a very, very unpredictable fighter. And so a great way for Dricus to fight off Hamza's inevitability in terms of the takedown threat is to throw a lot of information at him. Be spontaneous. Throw low kicks. Throw high kicks. Throw in a lot of feints. Punch. Show him a clinch game. Use your strength. Dricus, you have to be spontaneous, man, because this is a fighter where you do not want to give him chance. Just as Khamzat has that active forward pressure game plan, Dricus has a spontaneous game plan as a countermeasure to make Khamzat second guess himself. So you got to be spontaneous, you got to show all your cards, and that'll make Khamzat want to push himself less and be more careful. And this serves as both a great neutralizer for Khamzat Chimaev's greatest talents, and also a great way to open Dricus' own and much broader MMA arsenal. So very interesting, and Dricus, you got to be spontaneous. The last key to victory for Dricus du Plessis is attrition and pace. As we know, Khamzat Chimaev has a questionable gas tank. How is Dricus going to exploit this and reap the full benefits of this flaw? He's going to have to be a high attrition striker. He's going to have to strike a lot. He's going to have to push the pace and make Khamzat tired. This also ties hand in hand with spontaneity and almost synergizes its value, because when you're both spontaneous and high attrition / pace, it's like, what can the opponent do? What do opponents do against him? Rob throws a killer pace at you, and he throws so many different weapons at you. But he's also very spontaneous in the fact that, as we saw in the O'Malley 2 fight, where he could take you down and he could also strike with you. Dricus is going to have to be able to do that. Maybe he should even throw a takedown threat of his own at once, just to keep Khamzat on his feet. But it's very important for Dricus to throw attrition and pace, because if he's very inactive, it opens a larger window for Khamzat to use his tools. If Dricus equally puts a pace and uses a lot of attrition against Khamzat, then it's going to make Khamzat have less of a window, less time essentially for him to use his weapons. So you got to use your attrition and pace, and you got to constantly make sure that Khamzat has minimal possibility in terms of exerting his own weapons. And you also got to try and fatigue Khamzat. Like I said before, this is a fight where I think that both fighters have an equal opportunity of winning, in some sense, in terms of their winning formula. Both fighters have a very clear winning formula. So if they execute that, they win. But we're going to have to see what happens. I'm going to go straight to my final predictions now. The first prediction, my confident prediction, I think Khamzat is going to win by round 1 submission. And I'm going to give this future a 50% chance, a 50% possibility. I think Khamzat's just going to be a bit too strong, a bit too inevitable. He gets Dricus to his feet. He eventually takes him down pretty smoothly. He finds the back control with a little bit of ground and pound, then he gets the rear naked choke. I think that's what's going to happen. The second future, if Dricus is a bit too difficult to submit, I think Khamzat can just straight up finish him. I think Khamzat can just ground and pound him. I'm going to give this future a 20% possibility. And here's where it gets interesting, like I said. If the fight does not get finished in the first round, I think Dricus du Plessis is going to win this fight, guys. And for future 3, I'm going to go DDP late finish round 4 or round 5. I'm going to give this future an 18% possibility. Like I said, I cannot see if Khamzat is a roller coaster. If you get past that first hump, the deepest downward trip, the rest becomes easy. I think that's a perfect allegory for this fight. If Dricus is supposed somehow he survives the first round, Khamzat is going to be able to, he's just going to fatigue, and he's not going to be able to finish Dricus. That's my opinion. And I think that Dricus' attrition is eventually going to get to Khamzat, and Dricus is going to get a late fight finish. Which leads me to the fourth future. If he doesn't finish him, he's just going to tech him, and Dricus will win a clear unanimous decision, winning the last 2 rounds very, very decisively. And I'm going to give this future a 12% possibility. So this is one hell of a fight. So many different possibilities, so many different tools, massive stylistic implications, massive legacy implications for both fighters. Both of these fighters are in my top 4 155 plus fighters of all time in terms of fighter quality. And if Dricus beats Khamzat, man, in a convincing way, I might have to give him number 1. Currently, I think Usman is number 1, but Dricus, man, you have a chance to be number 1. And likewise, if Khamzat dominates Dricus as effortlessly as he did Whitaker, then he's going to get number 1. So it's a crazy fight with crazy implications. I cannot wait myself. And I hope you guys enjoy the fight. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Let's revisit this after it happened. And I'll see you on the next one.